In the misted dreams of forgotten empires, there stands a city built on 7 hills, its roads stretching like veins across the body of a world that once bowed to its banners. Soldiers in scarlet cloaks march across deserts and mountains alike. Emissaries carry scrolls heavy with treaties and demands, and in the heart of the marble forum, geographers and scholars unroll parchment maps that define the known world, which is orderly, efficient, and decidedly Roman. Today, we're going to be unraveling the map making, the understanding of the world, the culture and society of the empire that shaped Europe. We're going to be expanding upon the ideas of Roman map making and cartography. We're going to use that to create a map that is true to their spirit, their understanding of the world and their priorities, socially and culturally. Hello adventurers and welcome back to the Red Quills. My name is Ryan and today we're going to be exploring Rome and its maps. So before we begin and before we really get into the concepts of what we're going to be mapping for a map of the Roman understanding of the world, let's talk about why Roman mapping is different from a lot of the other cultural maps that we've emulated in the past and from the other cultural maps in this series, and explore why we should make a map in that Roman kind of style. Rome was one of the most influential and powerful empires in the history of the world, and it has certainly shaped practically every European nation in history since then. But the strength of Rome, socially and culturally, didn't necessarily come from the strength of the legions. Like many great empires that lasted for generations at a time, Rome's strength was their draw towards efficiency, towards an understanding of how to manage an empire in a way that is socially, culturally, bureaucratically efficient in every given way, so that you can minimize the costs and maximize the effect. So this, naturally, will be a map of logistics. We will have a lot of stylistic nods towards it because there are a few extant Roman concepts and maps that still can be seen today, but we're going to be taking those ideas and merging the aesthetics with an understanding of how to create a map which is efficient, which shows the real value of the Roman Empire, which prioritizes a world which is ordered, managed, and disciplined in every way. So for this map, as for all of the other maps in this series, I'm taking ideas, concepts, and styles directly from historical texts. And in this case, I've chosen 3 in particular, 2 of which are maps, and 1 of which is just an administrational sort of text. The first that we're going to reference is actually a medieval text. It's not directly from the Roman Empire. It is called the Tabula Peutingeriana. It is a scroll. It's about 30 centimeters by about 6.5 meters long and exquisitely detailed to show the vast network of the public roads created by Rome, stretching from one corner of Europe far across to the Middle East. It even references roads out to Sri Lanka, out to China, and it's amazingly detailed to show the world as they understood it. It has a particular style of drawing towns and roads that I'm going to be using for this map, using long, straight lines that use steps to show divisions. They have an excellent system of showing the distances directly on the roads themselves rather than having a scale to the map, which allows for distortion on the map itself as being fairly unimportant. If you have a system like that in which you attach the distances directly to the roads, it can make so many things much more easy for you as a map maker. It brings not only any distortion from the map into play, but can also account for any vertical distortion that isn't shown on a flat map that you aren't really aware of looking down upon the world. So that's a system that I'm going to be using. I'm going to have the symbols and styles of symbols that they use in that map using these small sort of icons that I've referenced before in my Archaic Kingdom map video a long time ago. And I'm going to be using the steps to show the towns. So the large icons will be the cities, of which in this particular map I'm going to be having 42, and the steps between them show the villages, so that they're not really significant, but you can use it to navigate. And in this way, without filling the map with symbols and really straining the eye, using only text, I can show a good 112 settlements just on this piece of paper alone. So the Tabula Peutingeriana is actually fascinating, by the way. If you like history and you like cartography, absolutely look it up because its story is far too long to tell here. It is a medieval text that is thought to be based upon a text made by the Franks in the 7th century, but could also be based on something from, the late Middle Ages, a couple of centuries later. But it does show to such a degree of accuracy exactly how far the influence of the Roman Empire really went, to the extent that it includes references to the Silk Road. It has a temple to Augustus in, Arabia, the Malagay coast. It has icons showing the 3 most significant towns of the time, which is Rome, Constantinople, and Antioch. And it has a solid 555 different cities on it, and countless individual locations on there as well. It's sincerely one of the coolest maps I've ever seen. The second text that we're referencing is actually a mosaic from the floor of an ancient Roman building in the modern day Middle East called the Madaba map. It's a massive showing of what their understanding of the world in the Middle East was back then. And it's incredibly detailed and beautiful. It shows not only their geography, but an approach to a sort of stylistic aesthetic that I'm going to use to show the borders of the map and the physical description of the landscape. So when I make the map later on, the mountains, the border, the rivers, the hills, and the bay, the sea, will all be in this sort of mosaic style to reference the Madaba map. The third text that I'm going to reference isn't a map at all. Much like the mosaic wasn't a text, this isn't a map. It's from the Itinerarium Antonini from the 3rd century AD. It's basically just a Roman travel guide, but it does list the details that they found most significant to give to people. As an empire, they were incredibly organized. They were meticulous about their understanding of the world, and they tended to use and list only the details that were significant for the individual, which is great for me as a map maker because it tells me a lot about their culture and what they prioritize as putting on a map. So with these 3 texts in hand, the Tabula Peutingeriana, the Madaba map, and the Itinerarium Antonini, I've got an idea of what they prioritize as a society, what their networks will look like, how detailed it should be, and what style I should use. So I'm ready to start drawing. All right, much like the Romans, we're going to be very meticulous about this, and I'm going to divide this into several steps. The first step of which, as I'm getting out my blank piece of A2 paper, 180 GSM thick, because I'm going to be using watercolors on it, is define the purpose of the map. Everything in Imperial Rome exists for a specific purpose, and this map is absolutely no different. It's going to be fictional. I'm not actually doing a map of the Roman Empire. I could do a map of the Roman Empire in the future. You know what? Stick it in the comments. Everything in the Roman Empire served a purpose. This is not going to be in the Roman Empire. It's going to be in my fictional world in the Saturnorian Empire, which is based upon ancient Rome, which is great for me. The purpose of this map is going to be a Legionnaire's map. It's going to be an understanding of the world. It's going to be given to an individual squad as they're sent out in case they're separated or lost or something happens. They have a reference of the empire that they can use, which means we're going to pare it down to bare basics. They don't need an understanding of very much trade. They don't need an understanding of what the woodlands look like, of the vegetation. They need a map of the roads, of the major landmarks, and how they can navigate around it, which means as I make the border of the map, I'm going to have references to their life as legionaries. I'm going to put in their code of conduct. I made a pun. It's probably not very good. The laws for the soldiers, the lex militum, but I thought it would be fun to be a guiding light, so I made it the lux militum. Because the next one is to plan the layout. I'm still on the sketch here, as you can see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch out the empire and do the icons, locate the mountains and the hills in the same style as the Madaba mosaic, put the wording around the outside and the borders, and then start measuring out distances so that it's as meticulous as possible. And I have a reference map to use to do this, but in your own map, because of the system of doing this on roads, because the distances are attached directly to the lines rather than to the map as a whole, you don't really need to put much forethought into measuring out the whole thing. It can just be ad locatum. Now, step 3 is to choose your icons. In my case, I'm going directly with the icons from the Tabula Peutingeriana, but you can use things that are from, other ancient maps as well. Rome was one of the most well-documented empires in the history of the world, so you have no end of aesthetics that you can really draw on to show this. I particularly quite like the mosaic style. I experimented with it a bit on this map, but in the future I would probably change a couple of things. In my case, the icons from the tabula are decidedly more medieval than they are Roman. So I didn't do them in the same kind of style. I really pared them back aesthetically to fit them into the style of Rome. But you're going to need to think about what's relevant for your map. Cities, rivers, roads, mountains, hills. Because the fourth step is when you start inking it, as I'm going to do here, is to really make sure that it stands out to the eye. I'm making this almost entirely in red tones and blue tones. I've put the wording of the Lux Militum and the Lux Ducum in yellow so that that theoretically stands out a little bit more, but doesn't actually in practice. Again, I would do things a little differently if I were to do this a bit. Again, I would do this a little differently if I were to make the map again. So we've started inking things out. I'm going to be using an intense watercolor palette in order to do the mosaic, and this will take a great deal of time. I would not recommend this as a time-saving method. If you like it stylistically, be my guest. It will take you friggin' ages. This map took me 6 hours to do, only 1 hour of which was the inking. 5 hours was spent on the mosaic, which is fine. But still, be aware. Because most of the work for this map will be done in the sketch. The mosaic stuff doesn't require a great deal of forethought. Once you really get into the rhythm of it, you can just let yourself go for several hours and just do it without much thought. The difficulty of the map comes from making sure that everything is labeled, that you have all of the details. And when you're finished, you come out with something like this. Honestly, it looks a little bit less dynamic than I would have liked as a map maker, less aesthetic, but it does keep in mind the principles that I wanted to prioritize. It is very efficient. It does keep that aesthetic that is from the Madaba map, but the functionality of the Tabula Peutingeriana, but it does list all of the details that you would have found in the Itinerarium Antonini. So it does merge those three texts together into something that's, approximating an ancient Roman map. It doesn't look too detailed and too difficult to reproduce. So, it could be easily given to a legionary. If I were to make it again, I would probably minimize the amount of time I'm working on the mosaics and come up with a simpler way to do that. But I did want a reference to the Madaba map in here, and doing it that way is just extremely time consuming. So be aware of that sort of duality there. If you want an efficient map, it's not going to look great. If you want an aesthetic map, it's going to take you a long time. Trying to kind of balance it, compromise between the two in this map, it came up with a very specific result. What do you think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Would you use this kind of thing? Do you think it feels Roman? But anyway, we haven't finished the episode yet because there's a few more things that I want to discuss. So let's wrap it up. Today we learned that maps for Rome were tools for administration. So let's wrap it up. The lessons that we can learn from an ancient Roman map are, firstly, order and efficiency rule over everything. An ancient Roman map does prioritize being informative over being aesthetic. Clarity rules over everything. And if you create a map that does prioritize that functionality over aesthetics, it will give the impression of a military empire in the same way that Rome was as well. So if you can add small details like the icons, the borders to add some authenticity to the map, but be aware that they will take longer and they aren't necessarily things that Romans would have done for themselves. But using a Roman style map in your fantasy game can really add this feeling of authenticity. It can give your players the feeling of being soldiers, give a background to their understanding, their view of the empire in a particular sort of way. A Roman style map handed to your players tells them that they live in a world in which a vast empire, everything that they are surrounded by, everything that they could possibly move to, was once ruled by, or is still ruled by, this enormous centralized power that prioritizes function over everything else. And that's definitely something that you can use. So overall, this is what the map looks like when it's finished. Let me know what you think about it in the end. I might come back to the concept of doing an ancient Roman map. Let me know what you think. As always, I'm happy to chat about this, about any points that I wasn't clear on in the video, in the Discord. The link is in the description below. And of course, you are welcome to download the digital file for this map on the Red Quills Patreon. Link is also in the description below. It's always an absolute joy to work with this community. I'm happy to chat, leave comments if you do have any thoughts about this map, if you want me to work on anything else. For this series of videos, I will be going through and creating maps based upon different historical periods in time. So I did ancient Egypt last week. Next week, I will be doing the Han Dynasty of ancient China, which is going to be very, very interesting because they have some intact silk maps that I'll be using as the basis for the style that I'll be making. So I'm very excited for that one. Let me know if you're excited for it as well. I am so grateful to have my members and my patrons supporting me at this channel. It's been an absolute joy to be surrounded by this community. So if you do want to support, if you have room in your life for a fantasy map maker, check out the Patreon link, or you can become a YouTube member and get access to the videos early on. I will be starting to release members only videos because I create sort of spare videos as a backlog, and I've got a few of them now. So I'll be starting to release them as members only videos, tutorials as to map specific things that they can do rather than the generalized topics that I give out for the public videos. So keep your eyes out for that. If you're interested in that, you can check out my page. And once again, thank you to everyone. It's absolutely wonderful. I will see you all next week. This is Ryan of the Red Quills signing out. You know what? Stick it in the comments. If you want it, stick it in the comments. I'm just going to react to people. If you want it, stick it in the comments. Stick it in the comments. Just stick it in the comments. If you want me to do a map of the Roman Empire, stick it in the comments. I can do a special on creating a map of that empire that we can use in world building as well. It'll be a lot of work, so that will probably be a 2-episode one, honestly, because there's a lot that I would want to talk about. Anyway,